Quick quiz. What's your shop's close ratio? Did you just shout out a number to me, or did you have to take a wild guess? For 15 years, I owned and ran a marketing agency that was focused on getting more cars to Autobody shops. But the second that vehicle arrived, I lost control of the process. We tracked everything we did, and we could prove that the leads were coming in, where they came from, or even who the person was, instead of visits or clicks count. But if the shop didn't see sales improve, we'd lose the account. The real issue was simple. Most shops aren't vigilant about their sales process, and very, very few actually track close ratio. But this is so important, especially as we head into each new quarter or each new year, and we seek to make sales and growth improvements. Owners know their car count, they know their capacity, but ask them, hey, what's your close ratio? And you'll hear everything from, if they're in the lobby, we close it, to, I don't know, 80%, I think. Today, I'm talking with Shane Orlando from Orlando Autobody in Arizona, a shop that has a real system for tracking, improving, and forecasting their close ratio. And I think you'll be surprised by what the real numbers actually look like and what changes them. So let's jump in.
Welcome to Operational Intelligence. I'm Morgan Felshner, here with my co-host Tom Zoblin, a 15-year collision industry veteran and former marketing agency owner turned AI software builder. Each episode, we dive into one shop owner's unique superpower and unpack the exact steps they took to master it, so you can bring those ideas to life in your own business. Enjoy the episode. We hope you learn as much as we did.
Listen, thanks for being guest number 2 on my podcast here. I really appreciate it.
Happy to.
So, on operational excellence, the point of this podcast is to, when I had my marketing agency and I would meet guys like you, and, we would talk about marketing for like this amount of time, and the rest of the time we'd talk about the collision industry, your shop, and then, and then I would come out to shops and get to know guys like you and I would always see things that I thought shops were doing, kind of a little bit differently than other shops or something that you excelled at. And in the back of my mind, I was always like, these are kind of like podcast episodes. Like this should be out there more. There's a lot of focus on what's right and wrong with the collision industry, but nobody really focusing on the doers in the shop to the point of like what they're doing, like a specific aspect of what they're doing, or something that maybe another owner could hear and say, you know what, I probably could do that, or I've been struggling with that. That's a really great idea. I could take that home and put that into action. So instead of being broad, I'm being very focused, and so that's the role of this podcast. So, we kind of talked about a couple of things that I've observed from you, and obviously, we worked on the marketing side of things, so marketing and sales was a big one. So for you, I want to focus on, as you mentioned, that you're really kind of dialed in on your close ratio, right? And that's kind of what we're thinking about is your kind of your diligence around that. And I'll tell you why I think that's important. You talk to a shop owner and about sales and growth goals, and they're going to always talk about like where they want to be. Like any shop owner will tell you, oh, we do 50 cars a month, but we can do 65. They know what it's capable of producing, but there's this gap. Well, why aren't you doing 65, right? It's probably a sales and a marketing thing, or you just a front office. There's a roadblock in there somewhere. And then you ask them, well, what's your close ratio here? As you kind of start to drill down in there, because in order to figure out how to get 15 more cars in the door, in the front door, you can start to do the math backwards. Well, how many phone calls are you getting? How many appointments are you getting? And all that stuff. And so they'll and when you ask what's your close ratio, they'll just say 80%, 75%, and it's a number that is just a made up number. So if you are not tracking it and you're just guessing at it and you're trying to build an entire yearly plan, you're going to be flawed from day one because you don't know the math. So that's why I want to kind of get in with you on this one. So that's what this episode will be about. But before we get into that, just kind of want to get everybody up to speed on who you are for those that don't know. Tell me a little bit about your shop and your locations, how you got into the business.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I like probably a lot of owners. At a young age, started working on cars myself, and I'd never actually worked at a body shop. I just fixed up my own cars, and then eventually had people ask me to fix theirs. And this is back in the '80s, so it was real popular to paint muscle cars for people, etc. And so I started out in that side of things. I realized that very quickly that I was working for the clock. Right, there's only so many hours in a day. And those same clients would bring in a wrecked car and ask me to fix it. And while I could do that car in 3 days for twice as much money as the restoration I was doing for them, I quickly realized I should be doing that. And so it took about 10 years to go from, 100% collision work to, 90%, excuse me, 100% custom work and to roughly, 90% collision work and 10% custom work. And I did that for the next 10 years. I gave up the custom work, retail custom work, probably 10 years ago. Quit doing that. Shops got too busy, grew from one location to six. And then only recently in the last couple of years have I started to implement the restoration work again. That's a business that's underserved or an industry that's underserved. It's tough to find people to do it. There's another level of interest starting to come up with the younger people, and on top of that, it's starting to pay well. So
Yeah.
there's stuff I was painting for $3 to $5 grand in the '80s and '90s that the same paint job today would be 30 grand. And so in some cases 50 grand. So because of all that might be changing, but yeah, I that's kind of how I got started, and you know, um, I didn't even know what marketing was back then. I knew I was, you know, building beautiful cars for people, and in a sense, marketing for myself through those cars at car shows, and that's how I got more work. Um, but as you start to do collision work, you need to actually market, right, and figure out how you're going to get the phone to ring, and having done custom work for almost 15, 20 years. I had a fairly good reputation, so believe it or not, that served me well on the collision side of things. Um, but it'll only take you so far. It's not going to take you from one shop to six. And unless you are a DRP shop, which I really hadn't been for majority of those years, and being served business by the insurance carriers. To your point earlier, how do you grow your business? And how many booth cycles and all the data that will support, right, what numbers you can actually do out of a facility, if you're in a situation where you have endless amounts of work, so long as you can produce it and meet your cycle times and all the measures to satisfy the carriers. If you're not going to do all that, you'd better figure out another way to get the phone to ring. And if you're going to pay to have the phone ring, you better figure out a way to sell those people and follow up with them, because there was a few years where we tracked all of our close rates, and our cost to acquire a customer, all the way down to, I mean, we included our hats and shirts in our marketing, right?
Hmm.
And so there's times it was, oh man, on a bad month, $300 a customer, um,
That you
and
would spend you would spend 300 per customer just to
yeah,
attract.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, I included anything that resembled marketing in that. So hats, shirts, I could strip that stuff out. You only bought them a few times a year, but you know, I wanted to know, and it worked better when you told your riders, hey, every time you talk to a customer, it's close to $200, and then excuse me, close to $100, and then every time you close one, it's close to 200 or 300, right? So every time you walk out that door, if you burn $100 bill, you may talk differently to the client, right? And what are you doing after they leave? And so yeah, it's important to for me to track close rates, given our marketing budget is so much, right? So
Yeah. So, and despite the name Orlando, which is obviously your last name, all your shops are in Arizona, right? In the Phoenix, Scottsdale, Mesa. So, is that a challenge actually having the Orlando part of it? Does it kind of fight you in
well,
any way, like people searching for your name and things like that, or
well,
does
you
it
have to
help?
remember. Yeah, I totally get it. And if I started my business before there was the internet, and so it wasn't challenging until the internet came out. And then because early on in the days of the internet, my last name was competing with Google and in Orlando, Florida, right? So to your point, it was challenging. Um, and so then when I do paid ads, etc., in the early days, right, it was really tough. Um, and that's changed a bit, right? So Google's got
Hmm.
itself sorted out, and it doesn't impact me nearly as much. In fact, you don't get a lot of Orlando listings if you type Orlando and Phoenix, because it's looking right around your area for anything named Orlando, and then maybe broadly it would start to search for Florida, but that's fixed itself. But oddly enough, given that I'm from New York originally, and in
Hmm.
New York, Orlando is a last name, And then if you're next to Mexico here in Arizona, Orlando's a first name if you're Hispanic. So I would say more challenging than Google was that, I, was my shop Hispanic owned or Italian owned or whatever, right? In a market where maybe people might show up expecting us to speak Spanish and we don't, right?
Yeah.
Uh, because that was a problem I had early on, I went to the radio and TV to promote my business, which ended up, being very effective. And I did it for that purpose. I needed people to realize that, I probably don't speak Spanish, and whether we do or don't, we'll still fix your car. But you know,
Yeah.
yeah, those are challenges that people don't pay attention to when they're naming their business or growing their business, or there's a lot of things that when I coach people now or mentor people to get into this business, and I start with a name. It's very
Yeah. Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Start with a name. I could tell you all kind of stories about shops that have named things and like buying shops and naming it after the town that their first shop is in, even though they know they're going to grow. And I'm like, why are you doing this? And only to have to change all the branding again. And then you get some sort of weird name that doesn't make any sense anymore because it's tied to some town. Yeah, it's naming is. We probably should do a whole thing just on shop naming. For those that are looking to rebrand shops and things like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I recently
um,
helped a guy in I think it's Hereford, Texas, and he was leaving his shop employment of 30 years at a big shop in town, and he was going to name the business his name, and I went and explained everything I explained to you. Maybe you want to rethink that. And then, but then we ended up on Lone Star Collision, right? It's
hmm
Texas. Sounds like
hmm
it's probably been there forever, and if it hasn't been, someone just didn't pick the name, right? And it worked, right? It's very important to be some recognizable and not so nichey, right? Epic Collision, all the different buzzwords that people were using for all those years that are trendy, not very smart. So
yeah. So, as far as the tracking of the close ratios, I guess let's talk a little bit about how you're doing that. So what's your system? I mean, I actually don't know the answer to this. I just know, that we would go over, the opportunities, what the phone numbers were and things like that. But on your side of things, I never thought to ask this until now. How are you tracking? Is it a chart? Is it a Google sheet? Or walk us through that a little bit.
a bunch of the listeners to this won't know this, but you and I, not only have we marketed together, but what keeps us coming back to each other is our software experience, right? Our
Yeah.
technical knowledge of software, and I've built software for about 7 years inside of another company that I owned, and it'll teach you a lot about how a business runs and statistics and data driven industries and why it should be that way. Um, and I developed the software, you know, in 2010 that ultimately on the web, we have a form fill on the web for everyone that shows up at the shop, right? Most people hand them a clipboard. You fill this out. It's an information request. I digitize that, right? And then, when they push submit, it emails them a copy of it, and it emails our staff a copy, and of course, then that goes to the writer in the back, so he's not, redundantly doing anything, right? He has everything he needs to start an estimate, etc. Short of having an API into CCC, which everybody knows is nearly impossible, or the
Yeah.
estimating softwares, we have what we need, and so. Um, uh, So there's the information request, whether it be at the curb or whether someone logs onto our website. I was one of the first companies in Phoenix market to do online estimates. And those are both the same way, right? So we get an email and we follow up with them. Now, if at any point those people decide to use us, we have an online work authorization that works the same way. And then that software we developed is able to connect those two things as being they came in or they came in online and they signed with us. Now CCC has that ability, but what you find is people show up with an estimate and you don't write one, right? You might schedule them in and then they immediately go to, you wrote one, a preliminary, converted it to a job and that counts, but it's not as accurate as ours, right? There's a lot of conversations that happen at the curb that don't don't require any kind of paper transaction. So our workaround was to have everybody sign something right when they show up. It's the most accurate way to have a really good close rate. And then our system reports back to us monthly with what our close rate was per location, whether it be online for the month or for the year on average. And so um, that's recently in the last couple of years changed. It started to we're implementing a high level software that now allows us to follow all of those leads,
So
funnel them.
is that go high level? Is that what we're
Yeah, go
talking
high
about?
level. Yeah, we're using it
Yeah, go high
now. But
level.
mind you, I've had
Yeah.
what I've had since 2010.
Yeah.
So I had my
S
own version of that would be generated every month, and it was more, you know, like an Excel spreadsheet, and we would just follow up with those.
Yeah.
But now go live, go high level, and quite frankly, another proprietary software that we built that's similar to that. You'll be able to dump social media. Excuse me, you dump all your social media, any leads that you have, you dump them into their own funnels, and then you can follow them through the process. So it does both of our online and our curbside estimate requests. But now we have social coming in also. And then when you're asking people, you know, for how they heard about you, right? So you can track your campaigns, etc. Easier to do digitally, right? So there's a drop down, pick how you heard about us, and then the report can come to you automatically. So when I built all that stuff, I also tied a CRM into it. So everybody that either whether they're online or on the curbside, once they include their email, it it automatically subscribes into our CRM. So curbside estimate gets a message, an email in 10 minutes, just thanking them for stopping by, and then 5 and 10 days later, trying to get them to use our services. Those communications stop if at any point they sign a work authorization. So that's helpful. And then if they sign a work authorization, of course, they get an email that says, thanks for choosing us. And here's what you can expect communication wise or how to handle payments, etc. And so, you can eliminate one or two jobs by doing all that, right? It's a lot of work to manage a CRM and
Yeah.
the
So
communication. So,
just to kind of restate what I'm hearing you say. So the customer shows in and they sign in like I just went to my, I had to get some skin doctor stuff done up here. That's what this is. So I had, I walk in the doctor's office, I sign in. So you have them sign in like that, like they're at
we
a
have an
doctor's office. Is that what
iPad
you
at
mean?
each of our locations, and we hand it to them, and it's open to the form that they just fill
Okay.
out, and then they use their finger, sign, and push submit. And in the
And that
past, most shops have a clipboard with paper on it. Makes it
yeah.
challenging. Someone's got to
Okay,
input
so it's
all that.
already electronic then. Yeah, because I was
hmm
gonna ask, those were my next questions. Are they signing a piece of paper that you're scanning in, and then you have some sort of OCR like reader or something like that? So it's an online, it's a form that you just hand them digitally. That's pretty slick actually. So they're signing in, it's already in the system, and I'm thinking about this for those that are listening to this that don't have your software that might want to try to build something like this for
Or
themselves.
reach out to
Especially
us. hmm
yeah, especially moving into 2026, everybody's thinking about like how do we do better than 2025, which was not, the easiest year for the collision industry, or at least the shop owners anyway.
hmm
So step one would be some kind of a form that everybody that walks through the front door has to fill out. That's this way this person was here. So then step two, and then that goes into like some kind of thing where if you were to do this yourself, maybe that goes into like a spreadsheet or something. We had this many walk-ins, right? And
hmm
then also your that same form, is that being used now in your digital like leads, or does that somehow convert into that? Like if I'm on a Facebook and I do like an in-ad lead submission, is that porting into that, or is that the
Yeah,
same form that you're
it
using?
notifies us that somebody did it, right,
Uh-huh.
through email. And in our current system, go high level or the version that we made similarly, it dumps into like a Kanban, right? System where
Mm-hmm.
you have the lead came in and it tells you where, and then you can move it to first follow up, and then move it to second follow up, and then
Yeah.
either got the business or trash, right?
Yeah.
But they're all separated by the campaigns that they came in on, and then
Yeah.
all of those dump into our CRM, so they get they get on continuing communication over the next 3 to 5 years. They're constantly being touched with our how to winterize your vehicle or some how to summer's coming. We have what Happy New Year, wish them a happy holiday, that kind of thing. Remind them that
So
we're available.
so what about follow-ups on leads that are in but not closed? So they came in, you are you writing street estimates at that point when they walk in, or are you getting them in, walking the vehicle, and then scheduling them in so you can do a full teardown? What's the process there?
Well, if they don't already have an estimate, which we prefer they don't, we'll write them something. I try to teach my guys to just confidently sell the client that we can handle the claim, right? If you don't have to write an estimate, you've done your job really, really well and convince them to
Hmm.
just schedule the car in, or, if there's any reason that car can't be driven, which it happens more often than not, you get them an Uber home or set up the rental car for them and get them right in the repair. But you can't do that every time, but we do write an initial preliminary. We let them know that it's a preliminary. We can't, really do a proper estimate until the car gets delivered and torn down. And so, yep, that's what we do.
Okay. So you've got people that have walked in that you've scheduled to come in, and then I'm assuming there's some sort of, is that a manual process, or is that that follow up? Are the guys trained to just go through those after, or is the system pinging them, or how are they knowing who to call and when?
Yeah. So, I wish there was more visual for this, but in
You
our
can
system.
actually, if you want, later send me a couple screenshots, and I'll put it in this
Okay, good. I'll do
video
that.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
basically, you have the walk-in estimate column where we've
Mm-hmm.
initially done an estimate for them, and then you set a ticker in there. We say you gotta follow up with them in so many days. So every day when you come in, there's either a new email or something that says, "Hey, these ones are ready to follow up." The tile may change a color, so you have to follow up with them. Follow up and move them into you followed up with them, and then that has a new ticker, right? That
Mm-hmm.
says follow up with them a second time. It's kind of preset in the background. And then online estimates, right? They're on online estimate. You haven't done anything for them, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
the first follow up. It's not first follow up. It's reach out to
Yeah,
the client.
they're a step further
That's
down the
step
funnel. Yeah,
exactly. They're
yeah,
yeah they're one step removed. So you have to actually reach out to them, and that you get notified right away. Our rule of thumb is to contact any new lead within 5 minutes or less.
yeah. That's a
We
great.
found that you're more successful in doing that with online leads, and man, if you wait too long, you're going to lose them. And so,
They
strike
they
while
get
the
cold.
iron's hot, right? It's fresh on their mind. They just reached
Yeah,
out. It's good customer service, so we'll do that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and at my size, I have I have a dedicated person kind of managing all the locations and sitting at a computer doing this all day long. And so, um, but not real difficult to set up at the store location with each rider given a certain email, etc., that somebody can just constantly dive into. So
Okay. So if you're gonna kind of build something yourself, something like a go high level with a Kanban board, map out your phases that you want, get some kind of like a way to get the walk-ins into the system as well as the digital leads, so work with whoever you're working with for marketing on making sure that lead form comes into a way that you can capture it into your system. Um, so yeah, that's all good stuff. I'm curious, as an owner, how frequently are you looking at those numbers? Are you tracking that weekly and having a meeting with the team, or are you just looking at it kind of monthly or quarterly, or because especially with all your locations,
right,
how do you
company-wide,
do
we
that?
get an email monthly, and it goes out to the entire company. We have one email that forwards to everybody's email. It's where we do company-wide communication. That report goes out monthly to the team. Weekly, I get my own report from, built into our system. It sends one, and then quite frankly, at some level, I get a day's end report from every location. So it's a spreadsheet of all the cars that dropped, where the referral source was, ones that were picked up, checks that were delivered, etc. And it has a pie chart on it, and that pie chart has all the referral sources on it, so that I can track our referral sources real time.
Hmm.
And that particular report from each location has a year to date pie chart, right?
Mhm.
and then a weekly, monthly, or monthly pie chart. It kind of tells us where our referrals are coming from, which is huge if you're marketing, right? Help you spend your money in the right way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, to your point, I get a message every week that talks about how quickly to the 5 minutes that those people respond to how they doing with responding within 5 minutes to
Mhm.
certain needs, and then what's the current close rate, capture
So
rate.
yeah, so what do you think is a healthy capture rate for a body shop? What do you think a typical owner could expect? And then where are you guys? Are you
Yeah, well, it'll
beating
shock
that or?
you. The industry says around 75% is a good close rate. Now that being said, it includes DRPs, so they're getting a lot of
Mhm.
online shop assignments, etc. And they've been cars have been directed to go there, and those are
Mhm.
easy closes, just like in a non-DRP environment like us. Referrals are a real easy close. And so I think that's skewed. So when we first implemented, I think we're in the 30s. I think healthy is the 50%,
Mhm.
that's everything's firing and you're doing really good at it. But it's a lot, right? Marketing is, I can't tell you how many people spend money, and you did marketing, spend money to
Mhm.
market. But if they don't have their team set up to capture the calls and sell them and follow up correctly, it only makes the marketing company look bad, right? Like they didn't
Y-
do their
Yeah.
job right.
I know. I can't tell you how many times that was. Again, I can tell you horror stories on that one too. But one thing that you mentioned too is like on the drop down, how'd you hear about us? And Google is always going to be the answer. So I would have clients that would be like, I've been spending money with you for 4 months, and anybody just comes in here that just say we saw you on Google. I'm like, well, where do you think our ads are? Where do you think we're buying our ads? Like, it's not on Yahoo, like we're Google advertising for you. So of course they're gonna say Google, So like honestly, like if you can, and now with the geofencing was even harder because that is everywhere. I mean, it was banner ads everywhere, apps and websites and everything. So to ask
They'd
your
say
customer,
Google, despite it was
they're always gonna
five
say
other
Google.
places.
Yeah, it could have been their brother that said it. I mean, unless they have a very, very specific answer of where they heard from you, that's the one metric that I think is probably the least accurate. It's just like that
Referral
some any
source.
lot. Yeah, people want to please you. It's just like they may have heard you three different places. So is there an answer for? Well, I heard you. I saw you on your Facebook, and then I saw you on this, and then this. Like they're not going to tell you that.
Mm-mm.
They're just going to pick something to kind of because they're not thinking about your marketing and your sales. They're thinking about how much is this thing going to cost me, and
Mm-hmm.
how long is this going to suck for me? Like is this a 2 week thing, or am I going to have it on Friday? That's all they care about. So yeah, that of all the data capturing, asking a client prospect, where did you hear about us? That's a really hard one. Now, with you, it's probably a little bit differently. The shops that I know that, and I always recommend it. We didn't do TV or radio. It just wasn't something that we ever got to the scale to handle, or you need a special kind of media buyer that can, because we were a national company, so you need to have relationships with all the
That'd
markets
be
and the
tough
media buyer.
nationally.
Yeah, too hard. We'd have to. We couldn't have done it by just focusing on collision. We would have to be doing dealerships nationally and all that stuff. But anyway, the shops that I worked with, I always said if you have the budget to do some TV or radio, I think it does pay off. It's very top of the funnel, but everyone that does it that I've talked to, they always say people will come in and say, "Oh, I saw you on such and such." Like, one guy in Jersey, he does a TV and he's non-DRP and does a TV ad on all sports channels because he figures, you know, age, male, female doesn't matter. Everyone watches sports, and so that's a pretty smart bet. So local TV, I think, is local TV and radio does
Hmm.
pay off.
It does, and just for your listeners, it is top of the funnel in the long game. But my experience 10 years ago was, I had a $7,000 budget, and the very next day someone dropped off a $10,000 repair. Now granted I didn't make 10,000, but that kept me going.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll just give some advice, right? You want to do traffic spots around the news, right? Because there's a lot of digital radio out there. And then
Hmm.
same thing, use network TV. Don't use cable. Cable's fragmented, right? Network, it's 5, 10, 3, 12. is local radio or
Yeah.
TV, excuse me,
Yeah.
and so everybody will hear your ads. And so over time, you know, nobody knows that they need a body shop until they need a body shop. I say we're
Mhm.
in the oh shit business, right? Like you don't know until something happens, and
Y
you never,
yeah.
you know, it's the U-Haul effect. You never saw a body shop in your life until you, or a U-Haul in your life till you rent one. And
Yeah.
similarly, the body shops, they're here, but no one knows where they are. And so you want to be top of mind. And
Yeah.
so spend something. Now, you will be happy to hear this. If you're in rural markets, radio's cheap. You
Yeah.
dominate the radio for $1,000 a month. You
Yeah.
know, in rural markets, you know, populations of 10,000 to 25,000 or less. You know, so
Yeah.
good for your listeners to know that. But it does help. One thing I want to mention, just because I like to add some value to people, you know, besides what we're talking about, is that
Mhm.
and I talked to a lot of body shops. I'm in a 20 group. In fact, I've seen you at some of them, and we travel the country, and I'm always surprised at some of the things that we're doing that is cutting edge or not no one thought of, and so it's not for everybody. But our work authorization, and we've included things like do you want your car detailed? Would you like your chip or cracked windshield repaired while the car's here? And those are opportunities in that forum to generate more business, and nobody thinks about that. And why I've again tried to um, ultimately just take, guys have 15 hats on at a body shop, and if I can make them all wear one, we'll be more successful. And so taking some of the load off of people, asking all these questions, ask them in your work authorization, and then in ours, if they click that box, we get a separate email that says this person would like a windshield, right? So that
Yeah.
we look in the windshield email box, and we forward those to our glass partner, and we make sure they follow up and make it happen, and our details get noted at the top of the estimate, so we don't miss any of that. Was there anything spilled in the car during a wreck? How many people forget to ask that, and they show up and the whole inside of the car still got soda pop in it, where we didn't know that half our customers, that's what the car looks like when they dropped it off.
Yeah.
We don't know. If I had $10 every time a woman told me she was embarrassed and please don't look at the inside of her car while I'm doing an estimate, I'd be rich. I'm not picking on the ladies, but I got that a lot when I was
Yeah.
writing the sheets 20 years ago. We live in our cars. That's just how they look sometimes. But asking that simple question is helpful for people, and half the time it's something you could cover. You know, is covered in the claim. You want to ask them if they have had a car seat in the car. Now, to train your staff to ask those questions all the time is really difficult. But to just
Yeah.
ask a few of those difficult questions on your work authorization, or on your sign-in sheet, it eliminates. I mean, 100% of your customers are being asked that question the minute you add it to a work authorization.
So how many, if you had to guess, what percent of customers do you think you actually have an automatic upsell every time they're getting the car repaired that other shops might be leaving on the table?
Well, I'll just tell you this. I mean, at our locations, we probably across four of the main locations, because we have satellite locations that don't produce the actual work. They get about 10 to 15 windshield requests a month, and we
Wow.
close 30% of those. So that's huge, you
Yeah.
know. And then it comes natural to me when I'm talking to somebody and I see their windshield's cracked and I want to help them, and or they're dropping the car off. Can I get this taken care of while you're here? Um, but if I could duplicate myself, I'd be really, really successful, and I can't. Not everyone's great at everything. We got a lot going on. There could be four
Yeah.
people in your office. You can't ask everybody everything, including things like your payment policy and all that. You may have it on the wall. When they push submit on our estimate or excuse me, our work authorization, it triggers an email to go out to tell them all the stuff they need to be looking out for with regards to this car when they come pick it up, the car repair, and what to expect when they come pick it up. So You'd like to think your staff has enough time to explain all that, and that they're going to read the frame on the wall that has your payment policy, etc. But it doesn't happen, and they don't always read the emails, But I've told 100% of the people how this is going to go, by
Mhm.
automating a lot of that stuff. So, um,
Yeah,
and
that's
that
great.
leads back to what you said. Knowing the close rates helps a lot. Upselling people helps a lot, and then statistics and real data helps a lot. And how do you get good information out of? I mean, you can ask your guy how you think he's doing at the curb, and he'll tell you whatever he wants to tell you, but the numbers don't lie.
Mhm.
And so, if 100% of the people are being upsold on windshields and being asked about car seats and et cetera, you're probably doing pretty good.
So do you actually sell them a car seat if the
Well, you get them reimbursed. You just ask them to get the receipt and give it to the adjuster, and they'll get reimbursed for it. And it's just taking care of your client. They didn't know that,
man,
you know.
that is of all the years, 15 plus years doing this, I think you're the first shop that I've ever heard. Not saying that the other shops I worked with weren't doing this. The first time I've heard about that. What a great idea to ask about the car seat because we all know that has to be replaced immediately after an accident. Who, to actually help facilitate that for a customer. I bet you that goes really far. I mean, does that help a lot with referrals and things like that too?
I would think so. I mean, I will tell you, most people are shocked to know they can get a new car seat if it was in the car during a wreck. That's not something that people are just openly telling people, right?
Hmm.
They also don't know that they're entitled to diminished value and those kinds of things. And so I know that's a sensitive subject depending on the listener, but our job is to help people, right, and guide them through this. It's never happened to most people, and it'll happen maybe once in their lifetime. So you have one chance to earn their business, and then hopefully the rest of their family's business or people or acquaintances get their referrals. And so, all that stuff that you can stand out. And back when I first started, I used to just do extra stuff for them. It's all I knew what to do. Right? They had a dent in the blend panel. I'd fix it and point it out to them when I deliver the car. And of course, that never happens, and so they never forget you. And that worked for years. It helped grow my business. But there's other things you can do. That will leave a lasting impact on people, and that's how you'll get them to come back. Otherwise, it's transactional.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of the transactional thing too, and back to what you're saying about the people, one of the observations that I've seen in shops is you can train your staff, like this is the process, you got to go through this, and this. But what tends to happen is after a while, I think that the person is just going through their job and they're just dealing with the mechanics of their job. I need to do this for the insurance company. I need to get this in the CCC. I need to, and they forget. It's easy to forget because it's easy to forget that person, this is their first time going through this because it's the millionth time your front office person is going through the process. So it's easy to leave things off. And I don't think there's enough focus on the constant reminder of the sales process, the constant review of the sales process. Even shops that I think are operating on the highest level, and I'll sit there and when I visit a shop, I may like shadow the front office person or
Mm-hmm.
something,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll see them jump into mechanics mode. Like, a Tesla certified shop, parking lot full of Teslas, two Teslas pull up, and it's like, well, do you have an estimate yet, ma'am? Well, go out, and don't come back till you get one. Not in those words, but it's like you got a perfect opportunity to sell this person. I've been there where the car smells of like a brand new car. So this person's just bought this thing, freaked out that this thing just got into an accident. They're in a sea of Teslas, and no one's saying, just want you to know that you are in the right spot for Tesla repair in X town because just take a look around, look in the shop there. You can see we're the Tesla people, like stuff like that. How do you automate that? And I think that the closest thing you can do probably is what you're doing is putting that on that intake form. Your marketing can kind of bring that in, but to make sure that's happening. Because one of my questions actually is now that you've built these things, like what does that give you in the shop? And it sounds to me like it's consistency.
It does, and of course, there's never enough time in the day. So if you can take some of that off of your staff, they have more time to do the things you're talking about. Um, there's the inspect what you expect. I like you put a formal practice in place, and it doesn't take very long before it becomes informal. And to your
Hmm.
point, right, we're just so used to it, right? I listen at my own shops often. I'll be talking to you, but listening to the phone call. And one thing that will drive me up the wall is that somebody might ask for directions, and they'll hang up without getting their phone number and what time they expect them, and their name and number, their name, right? I'm like, write it down, put it in the calendar, put it on there for 3. If they don't show up, call them, right?
Yeah.
And I'll go out and go, did you get their information? No, I didn't. They just want our address. Okay. Well, how do you know that they showed up? Right?
Yeah.
It drives me batty. Again, if it cost $110 to get the phone to ring or have someone drive up, it's you're gonna pay attention. So
Yeah, so that's a good point too. So once you actually are tracking your close ratio with any kind of confidence, and you're tracking your opportunity ratio, then you actually could dial in how much is that customer costing you, that
to the
that
penny.
opportunity cost. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then that's all the tools you use to share with your staff. Like, either it's gonna, they're gonna want to really take care of people. That's their nature. Money motivates them. So letting them know that it's $100 to talk to people, right? We have a 3-ring policy. Answer the phone before the fourth ring, right? Always. So you
Hmm.
might get these people to start taking action on all the things that seem like are not that important, but are extremely important when you really start to track those things.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty good at it, but it's constant. I can't tell you. I at least send one email a month reminding people that, including I did one today, just reminding them of what I request. In fact, I did 2 this week. I saw just one person slip a bit based on an adjuster response that
Hmm.
wouldn't have happened had they followed our process. And so I'll screenshot that, send an email out, and remind people as to why we follow the process. Here's a
Hmm.
great example. Not pointing fingers, but just to better the company. And I request that everyone that reads it responds back that heard and understood, or that they
Hmm.
got it, because that's another
Hmm.
thing. You can send an email to the abyss, but if they're not responding to you, they're not paying attention, and that's it's not a dig on them. We're busy, but I want to know
Hmm.
you read it. So
Hmm.
again, that company-wide email is great, and that's another tidbit for people. You can create one email. Mine's team at Orlando Autobody, and then it's forwarded to all the inboxes, right? And so
Hmm.
when people respond, everybody, if you've figured out a way to get paid for something, you shared it in that email to the entire team. So if we've had a challenging OEM repair that we have been challenged in the past to get repaired, or we found a solution to a problem we've had ongoing, share it with the team. And
Hmm.
so that's made a huge difference.
So actually, I've got a kind of a follow-up question to that. For the person that's listening to this that may be trying to implement this thing to kind of help shortcut some of the stuff, are there any things that you've tried that didn't work, that just flat out didn't work, and trying to build up these processes or, this this kind of mantra that you have at the shop?
Well, well, I'm sure there's a lot, and mostly just what comes to mind is, keep it simple, because given that I did software,
Hmm.
um, I use an example, like everybody uses Excel and everybody uses Microsoft Word. And there's a toolbar at the top, and it'll do a lot of stuff, but most people know how to use about 10% of those
Hmm.
tools.
Hmm.
And that's because really smart people dove in and built something, and then they figured out while they were building it that it could do this and do this, and what if it did this, and the what ifs go on for months
Hmm.
and months, and
Yeah.
that's why you're never done with software. You don't want to do that to your team, right? So you want to be very careful to, as I mentioned, try to integrate some of what needs to be done electronically in your business, um, and and just keep it simple, right? Try to keep it simple, and then don't try to implement too many things all at once. Change causes upset is a famous saying, and if you don't believe it, right, go buy yourself a different brand cell phone and see if you're happy the whole time you try to learn it. It
Hmm.
doesn't happen. So, um, I mean, every time they give you a new upgrade on your iPhone, it's frustrating. So
Yeah.
I could, I'm sure I could find stuff. When I built software about 2010, we had version 1. We got about 40 SaaS users in the restoration space for the flood and fire restoration, one of my other businesses, And version 2 came out. It was so complex because we took input from the 40 clients we had and tried to solve all those things. And I quickly figured out why they come out with 1.1, version 1.1, 1.2. Not You don't go from 1 to 2 all in one jump.
Mhm.
You get a lot of customer service calls and frustrated people. Um, and so, you got to have one chief, one person in charge. That's
Mhm.
another big thing for some of the bigger companies. Um, and, uh, you know, anyway, I
So
could talk
so
for hours about
so
that.
yeah, so a simple system, one person in charge of it, and then small iterations will get you there a lot faster than big sweeping changes all the time and constant changes all the time.
Oh, and frustrate your people. Yeah. Your culture is really important. So, getting everybody swimming in the same direction is hard enough as it is. And then you'll have turnover, so you're always trying to get somebody up to speed. And then if you change everything too soon, it's tough. Um, we do the 20 groups annually, and you come back with, you can have 10 different ideas, but you
Mhm.
better, they only ask you to try and implement one or two between this meeting and the 6 months, the following meeting, and then see how it went. And, if you're lucky, you can do both of them.
Yeah, I think that's why things like the EOS method work so well. It's like three rocks. It's just three things. Just focus on three things every quarter. Just if you stay laser focused on it, because I think that the nature of collision repair owners specifically too, we're tinkerers. Like a lot. Like I'm a car guy, you're a car guy. We build hot rods. You always want to tweak stuff. It's never good enough. It's always something that you could do different and better.
Uh,
And so when you're the tinkerer mindset, you forget that not everybody else is, and
Absolutely.
there's
Great
personalities
point.
that, yeah, they want to just do it. Hey, this is, I have my coffee at 10, I have lunch at noon, like I'm out the door by 4 o'clock, whatever. They have their thing, and just because you see all this like cool shit you can be doing, cool stuff you can be doing, but you forget that not everybody thinks it's that cool too,
Yeah, well, a
and
simple thing might be that people can relate to is like implementing parts carts. Sounds simple. Take the parts off the cart, put them on the cart, put the broken ones on one, you know, and the good ones on another, and try and implement that. See how it goes.
yeah,
And then beyond that, then it goes from that to a laminated binder on there, or something that you put the parts list in, and then you require the parts guy to highlight everything that's there, or the parts, and so that we can clearly see if all the parts are there or not. And then there's mirror matching, and I mean, if you lay in bed long enough, you'll come up with 50 other things. Well, easy, make sure it's simple and easy. Do one thing at a
yeah,
time. So.
yeah, yeah. That's all. That's good advice. Um, Yeah, so I think that's a lot of my questions there because I was gonna say if you could teach a master class on what would those steps be, and I think we just covered that one. Um, so Shane, kind of my last question here is, who do you think we should have on the show next? Like, is there anybody that comes to mind that you think is like a great operator and they have like a specific thing that would be worthwhile kind of digging into? Because I'm always looking for ideas and people to reach out to.
Well, I know the guys over at Quality Collision are, you know, pretty high level. They are good guys and they do a great job, and they're OEM centric. They fix cars with OEM parts, and whether they do parts concessions or whatever it is that they do, it'd be useful for it may be some insight into how they're navigating that world. That might be fun. Tim Ronick's always a great guy. He's an AXO guy that has his finger on the pulse in the industry. That's huge. The current things in the industry that are really challenging is the pushback from insurance companies
Hmm.
and sudden co-pays on every car, the customer having to pay more than their deductible. There's some topics there that might be interesting. That
Yeah.
there's some experts on. Tim's got his finger on the pulse with that. Um, Maybe some of the other people doing podcasts. That's always fun to get two people doing podcasts talking.
Get a podcast host on here, you mean?
Yeah. They're always
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea too. That would be kind of interesting.
They're
I'd
fun.
actually like to, since I'm new at podcasting, maybe I'll ask them for tips on how to podcast.
Yeah, well, they
So,
don't get on. They're on their own a lot. I love seeing that. That's always a good move. But I'll think about it and text you outside of this meeting. If I
Yeah, yeah. Anybody that that's just like that one thing that kind of stands out. To me, it was always pretty obvious. I would just see like parts. You mentioned parts. I would see, you know, 20 different parts things, but there's one that just seemed to kind of like work better. It was a little bit smoother, or just it just were on it. And I was always curious about that. So I would ask them, hey, this seems kind of different than what else I see, and then they would just launch into this whole thing, and basically before you knew it, we had a podcast with no microphones. And so I always felt like if I, when I on the marketing side of things, the last thing I wanted to do was a marketing podcast because there's only just so much you can talk about with ads and websites and SEO. I still do the 20 group for Collision Hub, and I'm happy to do all those kinds of things, but to do a podcast about marketing over and over again, I just think would be kind of tedious. But inside the shop, there's just all this stuff that is happening, and there's just always an owner that just seemed to. And I was always curious, like, why'd you focus on that, and what drew you to this? And so I just wanted to kind of learn that more, and put it out there. So
Well,
yeah,
something
so that's
something came to mind. Axle has car beat board, which is a production schedule that's
yep.
interactive. The whole team
Hmm.
uses it, and I get a lot of messages annually from other shops asking us how we like it and how it's changed our business. And you know, it doesn't replace a production manager, but it almost does, really
Hmm.
close. And so
Yeah,
maybe you want to get somebody from AXO to do your podcast to talk about the car beat board and the importance of you know of that, right, and the production
yeah.
schedule and managing your the process. So that might be
Well, as
helpful.
you as you know, I have an AI production scheduler. I don't know if they're going to want me
Yeah,
to be on
yeah,
my podcast or not,
yeah.
but
Good
because we
point.
will we will be pushing that more later in the year. We're getting our insurance rebuttal product out in the market hopefully next month, and then that's on the roadmap is to get our scheduler out there more. So,
Yeah, I'm
but yeah,
I'm currently baiting an AI assistant for our follow up calls, and I'm
yeah,
super excited about that. And it seems to be going fairly well. So once again, trying to take some hats off of our people and have some of
yeah,
those preliminary follow ups called by AI and then moved automatically, right?
yeah,
And then the
yeah,
transcripts from those conversations being emailed to the team and added to the notes so that you can do the manual follow up maybe based on that information.
yeah.
And
And
so
we're looking into that too for our own sales process on our software is to
good
to
for
do
you.
some AI calling. Yeah,
Yeah, I love ours. Her name's Kate, and she's got a southern accent, and
yeah,
so. Um, but it's an exciting time, and it's very challenging. So
yeah.
hopefully, what I shared is helpful to people, and always available. I love helping people, and more than that, I hate watching people make the same mistakes I made.
Yeah.
That's painful. I remember how
I
hard it was.
I was gonna ask you if they want to learn more about your software, do you sell that still at your it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
built for a
we,
shop.
we,
Yeah.
we, we do. We've got other shops that are using what we've built.
So
Yep,
is that all right if I put a link to you and that in the show
absolutely.
notes here and they can reach out to you if they want to learn more about that?
Absolutely. You bet.
Okay. All right,
All right.
cool. All right. Shane, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming
Yeah,
on here and
man.
helping me. Yeah.
Yeah, and good luck to your future in podcasting, man. You're a great guy. For those out there that don't already know you, right? You've got a passion for this industry, and it's really
Yeah.
great, man. Appreciate what you're up to.
Yeah. Thanks, Shane.
You
All
betcha.
right.
Take care.
All right.